Is this the best hardtail in the world? I sure hope so. So this is the highly requested Rocky Mountain Growler 20 that I bought from a local bike shop for $1,200. And I gotta say, I'm pretty disappointed, and I need a win here, guys. We have to go all the way back to episode 2 where I was having an absolute blast on the Nuke-Proof Scout, but now we're on episode 5, and it's been a tough couple weeks with the Trek and then the Banshee. Now, I've heard so many people rant and rave about this Rocky Mountain frame being such a gnarly frame, able to eat up chunk, super compliant, and that's why I put $1,200 of my own money to make this test happen. But the biggest disappointment is the spec. You know, the parts that are on the frame. $1,200 is a lot of money, especially for a hardtail. So when I saw this bike came with a coil fork with chrome stanchions, I was like, what? Plus the website, I feel, tries to hide the fact that it comes with chrome stanchions with some deceptive photos. And when you see chrome stanchions, especially in 2023, it equals a cheap fork. And even Walmart has moved away from that due to the stigma. But somehow it still has a boost through axle, so that's good news. There's also cheap Clark's brakes, wire bead tires on some cheap wheels, and a generic square tapered bottom bracket. This bike in its stock form is super heavy too, 36.2 pounds. Also has a Shimano Dior 10-speed drivetrain, but it's not the long cage version, so it would have to be replaced if you wanted a bigger cassette or more gears. So for $1,200, you basically get a bike that maybe has huge potential because of the frame, but pretty much everything will need to be upgraded. And I just think there's a lot better deals on hardtails out there. And plus, if this bike doesn't win Hardtail Quest and become my personal hardtail, I'm gonna have to sell it, and I probably would only be able to get like $900 for it. But putting the price aside, the important thing here for the Hardtail Quest is that this frame is upgradable because it has all of today's standards. It has a boost through axle front and rear, BSA bottom bracket, comes with a dropper post, and a tapered head tube. So with that, we can go ahead and move forward with pimping this bike out and see if it lives up to the hype. But first, we gotta strip these bikes down. While I strip apart the bikes, a moment from today's sponsor, Ketone IQ. Now, I've been secretly testing ketones for almost a year now, and I'm happy to report back that these ketones give me so much energy on my rides, and I've also been using it when working on these videos, and it feels like it gives me a boost in brain power. Ketones are an energy source derived from fat, but Ketone IQ has found a way to isolate that into this bottle. So about an hour into my ride, I'll take a shot of Ketone IQ. Then about 3 hours into my ride, I'm like, wait, I still have energy. Ketone IQ is such a sneaky, clean energy with no buzz like caffeine or a sugar rush, and no crash or bonk after. And the first time I tried this, it didn't taste great, but the second time I tried it, my brain had already associated this with some super beneficial energy. And now, it tastes like apple juice. There's a reason why 60% of the Tour de France use Ketone IQ, and I highly recommend that you try it for yourself. So head to hvmn.com/Evan to save 30% off your first subscription order of Ketone IQ. That's hvmn.com/Evan and subscribe at checkout for 30% off. Now that the Rocky Mountain is apart, I cannot believe a hardtail this expensive came with an unsealed headset. I mean, come on, $1,200 hardtail here. Then the bottom bracket was super hard to get off, but luckily I had all the tools. But think about the people that buy this bike as their first bike, then they go to upgrade it because everything needs to be upgraded and have to drop a bunch of cash to get all the tools to upgrade this thing. Whew. All right, deep breath. Let's hope his frame is like a sleeper build or something, and maybe it's gonna be the best frame that I've ever ridden, who knows. But we have the frame stripped down, so let's focus on reviewing the frame, starting with the build quality. And right off the bat, I'm super bummed that there's internal cable routing because I had to cut the brake hose, which is another daunting task for a newcomer. But the welds are pretty good for machine welds, and the frame overall is pretty simplistic. I mean, it does make it super clean looking, but there's not really a lot to be said about it other than it's just kind of average. I'll give it a 2 out of 5. Then the tubing shape, and this frame has the most narrow tubing out of all the bikes that we've tested or are going to test. So this frame either has some super thick aluminum or it's gonna ride like a wet noodle. And if you look closely, the tubing is hydroformed, which is nice, and I've had the bike in my garage for about 2 weeks now, and I've probably checked 10 times to make sure it has a through axle, because usually bikes this cheap looking don't come with that. But I'll give the tubing shape a 1. But man, I am just burning a bridge here with Rocky Mountain. Oh well. But seriously, I got so many comments to include this bike in hardtail quests, and if it wasn't for all you guys, I would not have bought this bike to test it, so you guys better not be letting me down here. But I did check out the geometry, and it does actually look pretty good. The head tube angle is super raked out at 64 degrees, giving this bike huge potential in steep chunk. Then the reach is a bit longer than what I've been liking at 450 millimeters. And living up to the mountain bike trends of long, slack, and low, the wheelbase is the second longest out of all the frames, 1,210 millimeters. So just those geometry numbers alone, this bike is very similar to the Wragly Big Owl, but just a tad less long and slack. But the bottom bracket is a bit higher at 313 millimeters, but not super high and uncomfortable like the Roscoe and the Banshee. The stack is the lowest out of all the frames that we've tested, and tall bars are super awesome, but after the Banshee last week, I think I found a limit of how high up I want to feel while riding a hardtail. The seat tube is moderate, 75 degrees, and the chainstay is a bit long at 435, the longest out of all the bikes. So this frame and all the geometry numbers really gives me the impression that it's going to be good at high speeds and perform well on steep stuff, but honestly, if I'm riding steep chunk trails, I'll probably just take my full suspension, and I'd much rather be taking a hardtail out for single track and flow trails. And from what we found out on this quest to find the best hardtail is that long, slack geometry is not that great on single track, so we'll see how this bike rides. Oh, and quick update, since I built up these bird wheels, I've been using a center lock to 6-bolt adapter, which everyone warned me about not to do. And it's been about 6 months now, and I'm just now noticing the adapter and rotor are a bit wonky. So I bit the bullet and bought some new rotors from the Losco, link and code in the description. But with that, the bike is complete, and I did cheat a little bit. I zip tied my cables on the outside instead of routing them inside the frame, bleeding the brakes, all that headache. But what do you guys think about how it looks? Well, let's talk about the looks, and I don't know, I kind of like how it turned out. The bike overall is just kind of clean, even though the paint sometimes in the right light looks kind of pinkish. I'm man enough to ride a pink bike, but I wish it was a little bit more just hot rod red. But for the looks, I do kind of like it. I'm gonna give it a 4.2. Let's go ride. Now, I know I said last video that I get about 6 hours of riding in on each frame just to get a really good feel for it. But this time, I'm a little under the weather. Maybe you can hear it with my voice. So this is literally the first time I'm riding this other than on the street. And what I did is the bike actually fits pretty good. But it was a little strange with the short stem I usually use. And I swapped it out for a longer stem and also some taller bars. And then I moved the seat forward and the bike actually fits really well. But I can't yet give it that an official score because, I mean, this is my very first time I'm pedaling it. Well, just like I normally do, let's get warmed up on some jumps. It's been raining, so it's gonna be hero dirt today. Oh yeah, pretty good. Well, I gotta say, this is actually off to a pretty good start. Oh, hold on. Yeah. For a bike that is in last place on build quality and all the looks and everything, this is pretty good. But let's hit some single track. Well, this bike actually climbs super well. And I know it's a little early to be throwing out scores, but so far this climbing, I think it might be in the running to be a better climber than the Nuke-Proof Scout. I don't know, man. Yeah, there's something about the bike with the seat post and the bottom bracket and just how it feels sitting on it. And I can't quite put my finger on it, but I'm taking the long way today since I'm solo. So we got several more miles of single track to really feel out this bike.
and see how it goes. Let's hit it. Oh man, I can already tell this bike is pretty compliant on the little bumps on the single track. Whoa. Whoa. Where am I going? Yeah, the last two bikes with the Trek and the Banshee, I didn't really have a fun time while riding those, to be completely honest with you. And I think this is the week where I have fun again. Well, I don't think I went the right way. So right there is a flow trail. I think I might just take a little side quest. Whew. All right, here goes nothing. This is a high-speed flow trail. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, the turning feels a little sluggish. Oh yeah. Dang, camera got tilted. Yeah, so the turning felt a little sluggish, but it was weird. It actually felt like it had traction very well, like it was hugging the ground. And that's not something that I felt on the other bikes so far. But let's get back on that single track and gotta stay focused. All right, here's a little bit of tech. Oh, not bad. Not bad at all. Bike feels a little long. I'll talk more about that later. Well, I'm finally ready to give out my first score while riding, and it's going to be for single track. And this bike, it feels a little too long. Like, I don't know, just every kind of move I make with the turning and everything, it has to be a little bit more exaggerated, a little bit more drawn out, which will probably be good for the high speed stuff. But for single track, I just kind of sluggish. And also my back wheel gets kind of hung up on things where I wish the rear end was a little bit shorter. So with a single track, I'm gonna have to give the score a 4.6. Well, first up is the flow trail called Catapult. Let's hit it. Yeah. Oh, I need a shift. Wow, okay. This thing corners well. Yeah. Wow, okay. Interesting for sure. Yeah. Oh. Damn. That's got like a major rim strike on a rock. Well, I was gonna throw out a flow score during that run, but I got distracted. I was having too much fun. But the flow, man, I think the flow is like, it's right up there with that Ragley Big Owl. Remember that got a 5 out of 5 on flow. This bike is super stable in corners. I'm gonna give the flow a 4.6. So the climbing is a little bit, I could probably get used to the length and the pronounced movements and everything when climbing, but I feel like my weight is kind of pressed on my bars a little bit more than I'd like to. And it was the same way with the smaller stem and smaller bars. So I'm sure I'd get used to it over time, but it's just a tiny bit uncomfortable, and I don't want like numb hands at the end of the ride. So I'm gonna give the climbing a 4.1, but it's still a really good climber. I'm impressed with this bike. Even though I was talking major smack on it, the spec is awful. I'm gonna stick to that. But even though I was talking major crap on this bike, I mean, I'm impressed so far, but let's hit the jump trail and let's see how it corners. All right, this next one is medieval. Time for some jumps and cornering. Oh, I need a shift. Yeah, so what do you guys think about how this is filmed? I mean, obviously I don't have a cameraman for this one. Yeah, but I got a chest cam, I got the bar mount, and sometimes a tripod. It's been hard getting a cameraman. Now Charles is back in school, so I'm solo again. But I'm basically asking your permission. Like, I want to make good content for you guys. Entertaining stuff. Oh, I got a checkup right here. Real loose. Yeah. Shoot, I forgot to do a score. Yeah, basically I'm asking if it's okay if I just do action camera footage, because I mean, it's obviously the easiest just doing a chest camera footage, chest camera. Obviously I can add in a bar camera, and that's a little bit more complex. And then doing the tripod, that's like the most amount of work. But I'm asking you guys, what do you want? What do you want me, how do you want me to film these? And I'd love your feedback. But I've been riding right now for about, how long have I been riding for? I've been out here like 2 hours now. But right about now is when I take my Ketone IQ. Stuff is awesome. Followed up with my carb mixture here. And I'll be able to go for hours and hours. I have not yet found a limit on how long I can go taking the ketones and the carbs together. And I know people have recommended carbs before, but try ketones with carbs, and dude, it's like endless amount of energy. All right, let's go hit it. All right, this trail is called Boo Boo, and I'll really be able to lay it over in the corners. Some pretty fun jumps on this one too. Yeah. Whoa. All right, man. There's something weird with the jumping. I can't quite put my finger on it. We're gonna head to another trail right now. But for the cornering, the head tube angle being super slack, long wheelbase, this is the best cornering bike so far. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. But for the jumping, I think I figured it out. So the jumping feels kind of off. So I don't know if this frame is like really flexy, like super compliant, but it's like absorbing the lip. Like the Nuke Proof was really peppy. Well, this bike is almost like muted. So going up lips of jumps, it kind of takes away the G-forces, and then you can't get like a good pop off of it. So for the jumping, I'm gonna give the jumping a 3.6. But the Nuke Proof Scout was not that good at jumping either, and it still turned out to be a great bike. But we'll talk about the fit real quick. So the fit, I think I figured out what I like about the fit on bikes is when you're sitting on the seat, and instead of you sitting kind of straight up, some bikes make you do that. I like when the bike is kind of, makes you stretched out in a way, and it almost rotates your hips forward. Now this bike makes your hips rotate forward by having a long reach. And then just like the bottom bracket, everything just together is really nice. I'm gonna give the fit a 4.4 because it feels a tad too long for me. Whoa, I don't know where I'm going. All right, here goes the tech climb. Okay. Took a little bit more effort. It turned out pretty good. Whoa! On that tight stuff, I think the bike is just too long. Like the rear end gets hung up on things. Shit. So I'm gonna give the tech climb score It's decent, but it's just too long, especially in the rear end. So I'm gonna give it a, sweat in my eye. I'm gonna give it a 3.9, but we're here at the chunk. All right, here it goes. Hopefully my brakes work good. Whoa. Oh, that last trail was not long enough to test out the compliance and the chunk. Oh yeah. Yeah, so this bike, this frame, I mean, is excellent at small bump compliance. The harder stuff, I don't know. I feel like, oh, it's a little stiffer on the big stuff, and that's okay. It's still pretty compliant. So I'm gonna give the compliance score a 4.2. So let's hit this chunk coming up. Okay, all right, man. Wow, that was actually pretty fun. Although now my hands are getting a little bit numb like I anticipated, and also my legs are burning a little bit after that chunk run. So I'm gonna give the chunk a 4.75, but I'm really curious what the overall score is gonna be. So let's head back to the shop and let's find out.
Wow, that was pretty fun, and I needed that after a few tough weeks. So thanks to everyone for the recommendation on this Rocky Mountain. I would definitely recommend this frame, and it had some really strong areas, but also some weak areas, but it was right up there with the Nuke-Proof Scout on how well it rode. But I'm not going to apologize for getting pissed at the price of the Complete with all of those bad parts. And Rocky Mountain should really consider selling this as a frame only. And dude, if it had sliding dropouts and I could suck in the rear wheel a little bit more, it would probably be the best hardtail ever. But that brings us to the overall score of 82 out of 100, a pretty close second to the Nuke-Proof Scout. And let's just say for one moment that the Rocky Mountain scored the same as the Scout in build quality and tubing shape, well, it would have scored 85 out of 100. So it's close, but not quite. But next week's bike might just win this whole thing. Join us next week as we test out the RSD Middle Child. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on all the episodes of Hardtail Quest.